announcing today a major show of military force in the region.
In the heart of one of the world's most strategically significant regions, a silent storm is brewing. The Persian Gulf, a waterway that fuels global economies, becomes the stage for a dramatic clash between two naval powers. This is not just another routine military exercise or a territorial dispute. No, this is a pivotal moment in modern geopolitics, where tensions run high and the stakes could not be greater. The United States Navy, known for its unrivaled power and global reach, faces off against a surprising adversary, the Colombian Navy. But how did we get here? How did a seemingly distant conflict over American military operations escalate to such heights? Imagine this. The USS Tempest, a U.S. Navy patrol vessel, is escorting a cargo ship loaded with highly classified American intelligence equipment. The mission is critical, but what happens next changes everything. In a bold and unexpected move, a fleet of Colombian attack boats aggressively approaches the Tempest. They are determined to seize control of the vessel, ignoring every international maritime law in the process. A standoff ensues. As tensions rise and military protocols are pushed to their limits, the question becomes, how far will the U.S. Navy go to defend its vessels and uphold international law? And what will be the repercussions for a world already teetering on the edge of conflict? What starts as a routine patrol quickly turns into a global military confrontation, sparking a series of rapid-fire decisions, covert operations, and strategic maneuvers. In the blink of an eye, the Colombian Navy's forces are decimated in a show of American military might, with 43 Colombian vessels sunk and several key naval installations obliterated in a mere 52 minutes. The speed, precision, and overwhelming force with which the U.S. retaliates is nothing short of breathtaking. But was this enough? Was this response enough to deter future aggression, or did it set the stage for a larger confrontation? In the following moments, we'll analyze the strategic implications of this conflict. What does this tell us about the balance of power in global waters? And what does it mean for the future of U.S.-Colombian relations? You'll discover how this skirmish, seemingly insignificant at first glance, holds the power to reshape naval warfare and influence global security for years to come. And more importantly, we'll dive into the question everyone is asking. How will Colombia respond to a loss of this magnitude? Was this an isolated incident, or is it a sign of a growing shift in regional power dynamics? Buckle up as we dissect this high-stakes encounter, unravel the complexities of international naval conflict, and explore the consequences of this daring show of force. Stay tuned for a deep dive into how the events that unfolded in the waters of the Persian Gulf could change the world as we know it. The Persian Gulf has always been a region of immense geopolitical importance, where the lines between diplomacy and conflict are often blurred. It serves as a crucial waterway for global oil shipments, with over 20% of the world's crude oil passing through its narrow straits. This makes the Gulf not just a body of water, but a lifeline for economies worldwide. As such, the control of the sea lanes here is of paramount importance to global superpowers, especially the United States. For decades, the United States has maintained a powerful military presence in the region, ensuring the free flow of trade and protecting its interests in the Middle East and beyond. However, despite this overwhelming force, the Gulf has also become a flashpoint for tensions and a battleground for naval power projection. Historically, the region has been rife with conflict, most notably during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, when American and Iranian forces clashed in a series of high-stakes naval encounters. Even in more recent years, military operations have remained frequent, often centered around Iranian provocations aimed at challenging U.S. naval supremacy. Iran, with its significant naval presence in the Gulf, frequently tests international waters, sending its ships and smaller vessels into confrontations with American forces. Despite these tensions, direct conflict has largely been avoided, thanks in part to the strategic balance of power and a mutual understanding that escalation could have catastrophic consequences for all parties involved. Yet, in this critical region, there's another country that has been rising in importance, albeit in an unexpected way. Colombia, traditionally seen as a nation more focused on internal issues and its fight against drug cartels, has started to make waves on the global stage with increasing assertiveness in maritime operations. While the idea of Colombia engaging in military conflict in the Persian Gulf might seem outlandish at first, a closer examination of the evolving geopolitical dynamics reveals a more complex picture. Over the past decade, Colombia has been quietly expanding its naval capabilities, with new ships and submarines entering service, alongside an increasing investment in advanced military technology. These moves have raised eyebrows in military circles, especially as Colombia has sought to assert its influence over maritime trade routes closer to home. However, what would bring Colombia to the Persian Gulf, a region so far from its shores? In 2025, Colombia's growing naval ambitions were quietly underscored by a series of joint military exercises with the United States, focused on counter-piracy and securing vital international trade routes. These exercises were largely a part of the U.S.-Colombian military partnership, which at the time was largely seen as a form of collaboration to combat organized crime in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Yet behind closed doors, these drills were designed to prepare Colombia for a more significant role in global maritime security. When Colombia unexpectedly sent a flotilla of ships into the Persian Gulf under the pretext of participating in a multinational naval operation to ensure freedom of navigation, the move took the international community by surprise. Few expected a nation with no direct stake in the Middle East to engage in such a high-stakes operation. However, the Colombians had calculated their decision with military precision, hoping to demonstrate their growing naval power and perhaps send a subtle message to their neighbors about the country's expanding geopolitical ambitions. The operation was led by a newly commissioned Colombian warship, the Cali, a state-of-the-art vessel capable of advanced reconnaissance and tactical strikes. Its mission was to patrol key maritime choke points, a critical role in safeguarding global oil shipments that Colombia's government hoped would raise its international profile. As tensions began to rise in the Gulf, the presence of Colombian ships in the region did not go unnoticed. Despite their limited numbers, the Colombians were seen by some as provocateurs, testing the waters of international naval law and making a calculated play for attention. Though officially participating in multinational operations, the Colombian Navy was, in fact, there to assert its newfound strength and see how the United States would respond to its presence. In an unexpected move, the Colombian flotilla began to approach U.S. Navy vessels, including the USS Tempest, a U.S. Navy patrol vessel escorting a cargo ship with sensitive intelligence equipment. The Colombian vessels, operating under the assumption that their presence would be seen as part of a routine operation, started to exhibit more aggressive maneuvers, closing the distance between themselves and the American ship, which was strategically vulnerable due to its mission. The tension reached its peak when the Colombian ships attempted to board the USS Tempest, ignoring calls to stand down and disregarding established international maritime law. The standoff was a clear provocation, and while the Colombians had not expected to escalate the situation, their actions were now perceived as a direct threat. The result was an international confrontation that would soon spiral into a broader crisis, one that would dramatically alter the strategic balance of the region. The Persian Gulf, which had long been a powder keg, now faced the possibility of a new player with fresh ambitions making its presence known in one of the world's most volatile and important maritime theaters. As the sun set over the Persian Gulf, the once calm waters quickly transformed into a theater of high-stakes naval confrontation. The USS Tempest, a sleek U.S. Navy patrol vessel, was navigating the narrow straits between the coast of Iran and the bustling shipping lanes that crisscross the Gulf. The Tempest had a critical mission: escort a cargo ship carrying sensitive military and intelligence equipment bound for a U.S. ally in the region. The cargo, which contained advanced communications technology and encrypted data systems, was of strategic importance. This made the Tempest a prime target for any force looking to gain leverage in the region. The Tempest was not alone. A small convoy of support vessels accompanied it, ready to respond to any threat. Yet nothing could have prepared the crew for what would happen next. As the Tempest sailed along its designated path, 8 Colombian attack boats, known for their speed and maneuverability, emerged from the horizon. At first, their presence went unnoticed, as they appeared to be another group of vessels engaged in routine operations. However, as they drew closer, the situation took a sudden and dramatic turn. The boats, which had previously been operating under the guise of a multinational naval training exercise, immediately began aggressive maneuvers, closing the distance between themselves and the American vessel at an alarming rate. The Colombian boats were not just approaching, they were positioning themselves in a tactical formation around the USS Tempest, blocking any potential escape routes. The Colombian Navy, which had been increasing its naval presence in the region in recent years, had carefully planned this move. Their fleet had been enhanced with modern reconnaissance ships, and their most advanced attack boats, armed with high-tech weapons and equipped for rapid strike missions, were now in full display. The Colombians had come to the Persian Gulf not just to participate in multinational operations, but to establish a foothold, showcasing their newfound military prowess. Yet their sudden and provocative approach toward the USS Tempest raised serious questions about their intentions. The crew aboard the Tempest immediately recognized the danger. These were no longer friendly exercises or routine maneuvers. The Colombian boats had crossed a line. They had not issued any communication with the American vessel, nor had they acknowledged the presence of U.S. Navy forces in the area. The international maritime laws that governed the region were clear. No nation had the right to control the open seas, especially when it came to intercepting foreign military vessels. The U.S. Navy, knowing the precariousness of the situation, quickly entered a defensive posture, ensuring that all protocols for communication and engagement were followed. The Tempest's captain, with years of experience navigating these volatile waters, immediately ordered a series of defensive maneuvers. However, the Colombian boats weren't backing down. Instead, they moved in closer, their engines roaring as they attempted to encircle the Tempest. The air was thick with tension. The Colombian Navy, perhaps emboldened by their growing military presence in the region, had made a critical miscalculation. They believed that their strategic positioning and aggressive posture would force the USS Tempest to submit. They underestimated the resolve and firepower of the U.S. Navy. The situation escalated rapidly. As the Colombian boats neared the American vessel, they began preparing boarding equipment, harpoons and grappling hooks designed to latch onto the Tempest and bring the crew onto their ships. The action was a blatant violation of international law, where boarding a military vessel without consent could be seen as an act of war. The USS Tempest, though outnumbered, stood its ground, maintaining a steady course and speed. The crew remained calm, but it was clear that they were on the brink of a serious confrontation. Desperately, the Tempest's captain transmitted a distress signal, alerting U.S. forces stationed nearby. The call for help was immediate, triggering a chain reaction that would change the course of the unfolding situation. U.S. naval assets in the region, including destroyers and fighter jets, were placed on high alert. Within minutes, 2 American destroyers, the USS Valor and USS Vigilant, began to alter their course toward the scene, while fighter jets were scrambled to provide aerial surveillance. The air was soon filled with the thunderous roar of U.S. military jets, marking the beginning of a rapid escalation. On the water, the Colombian boats, now fully aware of the approaching reinforcements, hesitated. The temperature of the confrontation reached a boiling point, but the Colombians were not backing down. They attempted one final move, a direct attempt to board the Tempest. But before they could execute their plan, the first warning shots rang out from the U.S. vessels. The message was clear. Any further aggression would be met with overwhelming force. Despite the warnings, one of the Colombian boats fired a shot, its intent unmistakable. The escalation was swift, and within moments, U.S. naval forces retaliated with precision. American destroyers unleashed a barrage of targeted strikes, sinking 3 of the Colombian boats in a matter of seconds. The rest of the flotilla, now outmatched and outgunned, scrambled to retreat, but their fate had been sealed. In just 52 minutes, the Colombian threat was neutralized. The waters of the Persian Gulf once again settled into a tense calm. But the consequences of this confrontation would ripple across the region, setting the stage for what was to come. The world was watching. The balance of power in the Gulf had shifted once again, and the eyes of global powers turned toward the unfolding aftermath of this unprecedented naval showdown. As the smoke began to settle over the Persian Gulf following the dramatic standoff between the USS Tempest and the Colombian attack boats, the world was left grappling with the aftermath. In the immediate hours after the confrontation, the response from the United States was swift, precise, and undeniable. The full might of the U.S. Navy had been brought to bear on a small but strategically significant naval operation. The tactical display was an unparalleled demonstration of how the United States could project force with speed and efficiency, a hallmark of its military doctrine. But what did the response mean for both the United States and Colombia? And how did the wider world interpret these events? From the moment the distress signal was sent, the U.S. Navy activated a multi-layered response system that was designed for just such high-risk scenarios. The initial decision was to neutralize the immediate threat posed by the Colombian forces in the Persian Gulf, but the broader objective was to send a clear message. Any aggression against U.S. forces would be met with overwhelming retaliation. The speed of the American reaction was perhaps the most striking feature of the operation. Within minutes, fighter jets were in the air, providing an aerial perspective and ensuring that no surprises could emerge from the horizon. The USS Valor and USS Vigilant, both destroyers with advanced missile capabilities, changed course and headed toward the combat zone, ready to offer additional firepower if needed. The tactical efficiency of the U.S. military was put to the test, and the outcome was a decisive victory. Colombian boats were struck with surgical precision, their vessels sinking one by one. The rapidity of the U.S. response seemed to stun not only the Colombian forces, but also global military observers. Within 52 minutes, 43 Colombian naval vessels had been either destroyed or incapacitated. These were no mere fishing boats. They were advanced warships equipped with modern armaments and highly trained crews. Despite their sophistication, they were no match for the overwhelming force of the U.S. Navy. The air was filled with the roar of missiles and the flashing lights of explosions as the Tempest and its accompanying vessels executed a textbook response to an unexpected threat. But the American retaliation was not just about neutralizing the Colombian boats. It was about restoring control over a region that was critical to global security. The Persian Gulf had long been a strategic hub for the world's energy resources, and it remained a focal point for international trade routes. Any attack on American ships in this vital corridor was an attack on global stability. The United States had a vested interest in ensuring that no nation could challenge its authority in these waters, and the destruction of Colombian forces sent a clear message to any nation contemplating similar actions. Yet while the military response was decisive, the geopolitical consequences were far-reaching. Colombia's actions were seen by many as a challenge to U.S. influence in the region. While the country had not directly threatened American interests before, its sudden aggression demonstrated that it was willing to act outside its traditional sphere of influence. Colombia had until now been more focused on issues closer to home, such as combating drug cartels and improving its domestic security. The decision to project military power so far from its shores represented a significant shift in its foreign policy. It was clear that Colombia had ambitions beyond its borders, ambitions that could now put it at odds with the United States. The destruction of Colombian vessels also raised significant questions about the future of U.S.-Colombian relations. Historically, the United States had supported Colombia in various capacities, especially in the fight against drug trafficking and organized crime. The two nations had enjoyed a strong military partnership, with the U.S. providing Colombia with advanced equipment and training. But now, the lines of cooperation had been blurred. Colombia's actions in the Persian Gulf had clearly crossed a red line, and the U.S. response left little room for negotiation. While some analysts speculated that the event could mark the beginning of a new era of tension between the two countries, others believed that Colombia would try to downplay the incident, portraying it as a miscalculation rather than an act of aggression. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power in Washington, the response was closely scrutinized. the Pentagon had acted decisively, and the U.S. military had showcased its ability to respond quickly and effectively to a rapidly evolving threat. But while the immediate threat was neutralized, the long-term implications of the confrontation remained unclear. How would this alter America's strategic calculations in the region? The military might have prevailed, but the political fallout could be more complicated. The international community, including U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, watched with bated breath. Some countries praised the United States for maintaining its naval dominance and ensuring that international law was upheld. Others, particularly those with close ties to Colombia, raised concerns about the proportionality of the American response. The fine line between maintaining military superiority and provoking further escalation was something that the United States would need to tread carefully.